So today I'm showing you the second part of my Rosie the Riveter look, which is the making of the overalls or dungarees. Now, I haven't worn this style of garment since I was about 10 years old. Even then I looked a little bit rectangular in it. So I'm hoping, but only time will tell, that this is going to look cute as opposed to we shall see. So let's see how I get on and how they look on me in the end. I started by wrestling my fabric onto my cutting out table. It's a cotton twill by Tuppence Halfpenny, which I bought from Spoonflower, and as you can see it has this wonderful design of spitfire planes. With the pattern pieces cut out, I stitched the darts in the front and back and then stitched the side seams and the inside leg seams. So these are how the overalls look at the moment. I've left a opening at the left side which will have a placket and a button fastening, and then those are the darts which reach from the waist at both the front and the back on each side, and I've stitched the inner leg seams and the side seams. And then the trousers or pants are cut quite long because the hem is going to be turned up to form a turn up kind of cuff. And I overlocked or serged each of the pattern pieces before I started the sewing. And then I worked on the bodice, which I suppose it's almost like a kind of halter top really. First of all, stitching in the bust darts, which they're quite deep, those bust darts, to give a very definite shapeliness. You can see that they're quite deep there, and the front of the halter neck is joined to the back at the right side but not to the left side, and it's just turned under that back piece. And then across the front there's a grown on hem, which is like I suppose it's like a facing, and you just turn along those tailor's tacks I'm pointing out and then slip stitch that down to the front, and then the very edge, which is to meet the placket opening, that is enclosed in a bias binding, just slip stitched also down to the wrong side, and you can see that those bust darts give a really definite shape to that halter neck type top. And then I created these straps for the top by sewing around right side to right side around the edges, and then leaving a gap in the center of each strip so that they can be turned through to the right side. And then once I've got those through and pressed out the corners, I'll give them a good press. And then these are the straps all turned right side out and pressed, and their opening through which I turn them still needs to be slip stitched closed. And I'm going to do buttonholes at the ends here. I want to do bound buttonholes, and you might therefore realise I have made a mistake which I haven't noticed as yet. And then the straps are joined to the front of the top there, and then I'm going to pin the top onto the trousers or pants ready for stitching. So I've just start at one side, and then there's no gathering or anything, it just fits around, and that left side I've started at is where the opening for the overalls or dungarees is going to be. So it will have a placket attached all the way along that edge from the front all the way down to the pants or the trousers, and then I'm going to do a fastening of bound buttonholes, so I think that's at least 6 bound buttonholes to do. And then I'm just working on the pockets, and I'm probably going to do these contrast pockets because I did contrast fabrics on the blouse, but I've made some self pockets just to try them on the overalls, just to see the effect and just to show you how the pockets are made. So there's a pattern piece for the main part of the pocket, and then the directions, it's the same as for the blouse. The directions are just to cut a strip around the same width as your pocket, turn under the edges on 3 sides, and then I'll just show you because this is a bit unusual. You join the pocket like this, so you are joining wrong side to wrong side just at the very top there, flipping it over, and then that long edge will be stitched, and then you turn the flap over like that, and then top stitch around the flap of the pocket, and that just creates a false flap, actually, just top stitch around there, and then the whole pocket with its kind of false flap is top stitched onto the dungarees, and there are 2 pockets for the dungarees or overalls, one for the top and one for the pants or trousers. And then I went on to creating the turn up on the trousers or pants. So you start by just turning up the lower edge once, just the seam allowance, and then turning up again along a line of tailor's tacks to create that turning on the wrong side of the trousers or pants, and then you turn them through to the right side and then turn the lower edge again, and you can see that the edge now meets the turning of the inner pants or trousers, and the turn up is just tacked in place at intervals around the legs, and that lowest edge, those 2 parts I'm showing you, they're just slip stitched together, and that creates a secure turn up, but one that looks, suitably casual. And then with the top stitched to the pants or trousers, you can see that the seam is completely flat, no gathers, and it just fits exactly, and I've taken care to match the side seams exactly, and I've slip stitched the straps to the front of the bodice, and now I just need to do a placket to create the opening for the bound buttonholes on the left side. And then I'm on to making my self-covered buttons, and I bought these ones from Hemline, and they worked really well, an awful lot better than the buttons that I used to make my blouse. So I'm going to replace those. Well, they've fallen apart anyway, so I'm definitely going to replace those with these hemline ones, which actually stayed together after I'd made them, which is always a good thing. So yeah, cutting out the circle just larger than the button, centering my spitfire motif, then pushing the fabric around the edges of the button into the center. It is a bit of a fiddly process, but it can be done, and these buttons had little sort of serrated bits at the edge which helped a bit, and then pressing the back of the button down, and there we are. There's my little spitfire in the center, and then that's what the button looks like on the back with that loop for stitching it onto the garment. Yeah, there's my little spitfire right in the middle. So I've just realised I'm going to have to unpick this point I so carefully stitched onto the straps, because I want to do bound buttonholes. I need to be able to open that up again, which is a bit of a blow. A last look at that stitching perfection before I reach for the seam ripper, and there it goes. So I've started the bound buttonhole marathon by marking out the buttonholes in tailor's chalk along that opening, and I'm going to be doing the buttonholes on that facing as well, kind of facing of the placket. And then just to show you the turn up of the trousers or pants, they're slip stitched around that lower edge, and then the turn ups at the top are just, it says tack in the instructions, but just basically a few over stitches at intervals along that turn up. I mean, they do need a good press. Then next I top stitched the belt over the centre seam of the overalls, just matching the centre of the belt to that seam. I would have liked to use the contrast light blue fabric actually, but I ran out of it. Luckily I had lots of the darker fabric because I initially, I have to confess, cut the belt out lengthways, and basically the spitfires were flying off in the wrong direction. And then just before stitching back down the other side of the belt, I'm making sure that it's lying completely flat and there are no rumples. And it needs a good press, but just to show you, I've top stitched really close to the edge of that belt that's stitched over that central seam, and made sure that it's lying completely flat. And for some reason all the spitfires just on the belt are flying upwards. And then all that was left to do to finish was to top stitch the pockets in place. And here it is, my whole Rosie the Riveter outfit. I'm wearing the blouse that I made last time with my new overalls or dungarees. And the thing about this Spitfire fabric is not only that is it so in keeping with the Rosie the Riveter theme, but the darker teal blue fabric has the pale blue spitfires on it, and it's the exact shade of pale blue of the blouse, the other contrast fabric, and the spitfires on the pale blue fabric are the same shade of teal blue as the dungarees. And I've used a vintage novelty print scarf to tie up my hair in a turban style, just as they would have done in the 40s to go and work in the factories to keep their hair out of the way. I did read somewhere that the elastic in ponytail bands wasn't invented until in the late 50s. Not sure if that's true, but I might look into it because it might be true, and it might be why women in the 1940s tied up their hair in scarves rather than, you know, like we do, sweeping it back in a ponytail band. Interesting. And my what else? Oh, you can see that the buttons for the straps are at the back, which might be a bit more practical to have them at the front, but the pattern did have them at the back. And I put a hook and bar just on the waist there because there are several layers of fabric, and that's me doing my Rosie the Riveter pose. Those arm muscles aren't terribly impressive, are they? Not really. My friend Janine, Spend Love the Ex-Marine, would be, I suspect, have slightly more impressive arms than moi. I'm actually thinking out in my garden, I look all set to dig for victory, don't I? As you can imagine, this is a super comfortable outfit. The only thing with dungarees is that, I don't know if I should talk about this really, but when you want to go to the loo, there is quite a lot of unbuttoning and buttoning that needs to occur. But aside from that, these are really practical. I notice with actually quite a lot of my true vintage clothes, there is quite a lot of wriggling involved to get into them sometimes. So I think they took that in their stride. I would definitely recommend this pattern. Everything worked. The only thing, as I said, I would change is I put the buttons for the straps, cute as they look on the back, I would put them at the front for ease. Just wishing I'd tucked my blouse in a bit better at the back. It's the thing with being a YouTuber, you check everything from the front before filming and think, oh yes, that's all tucked in, that looks fine. And only after you've kind of come in and, relaxed and started your video editing, do you realise that things might have been adjusted a bit better at the back. And here comes Raisin Rabbit. She's been in slight disgrace today for a multitude of crimes. She's taking the opportunity to creep back into my favour. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing me make my Rosie the Riveter outfit, and that you might consider subscribing for more. And please like this video, and I shall see you next week.